February 13th, 1945. RAF Scampton Air Base, England. Flight Sergeant George Thompson climbs into his Lancaster bomber for a night raid on Dresden. He is 22 years old. This is his 28th mission. 2 more missions and he can go home. The briefing officer warned them Dresden would be heavily defended. The flight would take 8 hours in total darkness over Nazi Germany. Thompson and his 6 crew members knew the odds. Of the 125,000 men who served in RAF Bomber Command during World War II, 55,573 never came home. That is a 44% casualty rate, the highest of any British service in the entire war. Today we are explaining why RAF Bomber Command was a death sentence disguised as duty. Inside the Lancaster, every man's life depended on the others. The pilot sat at the controls, just 22 years old, responsible for the fate of 6 friends. He handled the 4 roaring Merlin engines, kept the bomber on course and made split-second decisions in darkness. Beside him, the engineer watched fuel gauges, adjusted throttles and stood ready to take over if the pilot slumped forward, because one bullet or one piece of shrapnel could send the whole aircraft into a fatal spiral. Behind them, the navigator hunched over charts and a flickering radar screen, plotting a path through blackness and flak. If he lost his bearings, the bomber could stray into a kill zone or miss the target entirely. Up in the nose, the bomb aimer waited for the moment to guide the bomb sight, his hand steady as the city lights flickered below. One mistake and the payload would fall wide, sometimes into fields, sometimes into crowded streets. Midway down the fuselage, the wireless operator tapped out Morse, relaying coded signals and listening for recall orders. If he missed a message, the crew might fly into a trap or fail to return at all. Above, the mid-upper gunner scanned the sky, searching for the twin lights of a night fighter. He covered the bomber's vulnerable arcs, knowing a single missed silhouette could mean sudden death. In the tail, the rear gunner sat alone in a glass bubble, exposed to -40 degrees, eyes aching from the cold and the glare of searchlights. He was the last line of defense, often the first to die. Lose any one of them and the rest might not make it home. Inside the Lancaster, survival was never just a matter of skill or courage. It was a chain and every link had to hold. RAF Bomber Command turned to the cover of night after daylight raids proved disastrous. Lacking long-range escorts, British bombers faced German fighters and flak alone. Doctrine shifted, strike at night, hit entire cities, and hope darkness would shield crews where firepower could not. The Area Bombing Directive formalized this approach, targeting industrial centers and civilian morale rather than pinpoint accuracy. Crews navigated by radar, H2S sets painting ghostly maps, oboe beams guiding select aircraft, while the Pathfinders, number 8 group, marked targets with flares. Their colored markers brought order to chaos, but a single error could scatter bombs across neighborhoods or empty fields. Precision was a hope, not a guarantee. The Americans chose a different path. United States Army Air Force's bombers attacked by day, relying on tight formations, heavy guns, and eventually P-51 Mustangs that could escort them all the way to Berlin. Their doctrine demanded daylight, precision, and overwhelming firepower. RAF crews, by contrast, flew through darkness, trusting technology and each other. Every mission was a gamble. 44% of airmen would not return. The strategy promised safety in numbers and innovation, but the night sky remained unforgiving. For those inside the Lancasters and Halifaxes, survival depended on radar, luck, and the hope that the next flare would land true. Engines straining under the weight, the Lancaster lurches down the runway, wheels barely clearing the grass as she claws into the night. 4 Merlin engines fight gravity with a full load, over 2,100 gallons of fuel and 14,000 pounds of bombs. Inside, the crew feels the pressure in their bones. Ron Smith, rear gunner, braces himself in his turret, already shivering. The cold bites through his electrically heated suit, the glass dome around him offering no shelter from the -40 air at altitude. Even before the channel appears below, isolation sets in. The cockpit is cramped, every movement restricted by gear and the narrow fuselage. Oxygen masks hang ready. At 10,000 feet, each man snaps his mask in place, the hiss of the regulator the only promise of survival above the clouds. A single failure in that line means unconsciousness in less than a minute. There is no turning back. The bomber climbs, heavy and slow, every mile a reminder of their vulnerability. The ground drops away, but the danger only grows. For the next 8 hours, the aircraft will be their entire world, a freezing, fragile shell flying into darkness. 7 lives bound together by wires, rivets, and trust. Dennis Field, 21, grips his harness as the Lancaster shudders through German airspace. Flak bursts bloom around them, each explosion a gamble. Shrapnel rattles the fuselage. Würzburg radar tracks every move, feeding positions to gunners and night fighters. Searchlights snap upward, pinning the bomber in a white cone. For a moment, the plane hangs exposed, a perfect target. Field's hands sweat as the Lancaster banks hard, trying to slip the beam. Below, German night fighters, Bf-110 fighters, and Ju-88 fighters close in. Guided by radar, they approach unseen, sliding beneath the bombers where no guns can reach. Their secret weapon is Schrag music, upward-firing cannons that send shells ripping through the belly of the aircraft. There is no warning, just a flash, then fire and chaos. The intercom erupts with static and shouts. Field trusts the crew and keeps moving. Every mile is a gauntlet. Flak, searchlights, silent killers below. Nearly half the crews will not make it home. James Flowers, bomb aimer, lies flat in the glass nose as the Lancaster steadies for the bomb run. The city below is already burning, but for these 2 minutes, everything depends on straight and level flight. No weaving, no evasive action, just a fixed heading into the heart of the defenses. Flak bursts hammer the air, searchlights claw at the darkness. Flowers calls out the final corrections, voice tight, hands cold with sweat. The pilot holds the line. In the tail, Miles trips turret jams. He fights the controls, trapped, unable to swing his guns as a night fighter flashes past. The seconds drag. Each one feels endless. The bomb doors open. Flowers sights the target, thumb poised over the release. The moment comes, bombs away. The Lancaster lurches, suddenly lighter. Engines roar. The pilot throws the bomber into a shallow dive, desperate to escape the killing zone. Tripp finally frees his turret, just in time to see the firestorm rising behind them. The glow from Dresden fills the sky, a living wound on the horizon. Relief mixes with horror. For a few, the ordeal is over. For many, it will never end. Leonard Cheshire flew over 100 missions. He remembered the briefings, the numbers delivered with a dry certainty. Out of every 100 crews sent, 5 would not return. The official figures are starker still. Of 125,000 young men who served in Bomber Command, 55,573 were killed. But death was not the only outcome. Another 8,400 were wounded, burned, blinded, or crippled. Nearly 9,800 ended up as prisoners of war, shot down and captured behind enemy lines. Only 13% managed to finish a full tour of 30 missions. Most never saw the end of their first. The average age was just 22. Each statistic is a life, a name, a family, a future erased or forever changed. Victor Gregg never forgot the firestorm over Hamburg. He called it a nightmare that haunted his sleep for decades. 42,000 civilians died in a single week, the sky burning red. After the war, men like Gregg returned home to silence, their service overshadowed by questions of morality. There was no Bomber Command Medal and no public welcome. For years, official policy kept their sacrifice in the shadows. Air Marshal Arthur Harris, the architect of the campaign, defended the raids, saying, "We shall sow the wind and reap the whirlwind." But for many veterans, the whirlwind never stopped. Nightmares, guilt, and the sense of being forgotten became their legacy. Only in 2012 did the government finally issue a clasp in recognition, decades after the last raids. The debate endures between necessity and horror, courage and regret. George Thompson's name is carved in stone at Runnymede, alongside more than 20,000 others who vanished without a grave. Each panel there tells the story of a life cut short, a mission that never ended. The numbers, 55,573 dead, average age just 22, become faces, families, futures lost. The Bomber Command Memorial in Green Park stands in London, bronze figures locked in silent witness, their eyes forever searching a horizon they never reached. Inscriptions list the fallen, not as statistics, but as sons, brothers, friends. For every George Thompson, there is a name to remember, a story unfinished. These memorials do not settle the questions or ease the burden. They keep the memory alive, holding sacrifice and sorrow together in the living world. Tonight, another young airman waits in silence. Statistically, nearly half won't return. Their courage is met only by the darkness ahead and the moral fog behind. 55,000 names, mostly under 25, still lack a home on Britain's conscience. Some debts of memory and of truth can never be repaid.